Hey everyone, it's Daphne from Scrap and Create. Today we're going to get started on the Stamperia Make-A-Wish, which is one of their new collections, just released within the last couple of weeks. This mini album is going to be 8.5 by 8.5, and I've pre-built my album and added my bookbinding tape to the cover. And I've got my pocket pages already. So there is a tutorial to build the base book, but I went ahead and did that offline. We are going to follow the same process that we did for the Stamperia Oriental Garden, where I'm going to add the interactive components to the page and then layer on the designer paper before I move on to the next page. I got some feedback and it seemed like people like that process, so I'm going to stick with it. And I think I'm fairly organized. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and sit down and we will get started. So we're going to start naturally on page 1. And page 1 is a fairly simple design. It's not very bulky. It's a flap and a pocket. So this is going to go on the inside. This is a simple pocket. And here's our beautiful cover for the flap. So I'm really liking this paper. It was a lot of fun to work with, but it is quite busy. So some of the pages are going to be relatively simple just because there's so much pattern involved with this collection. And this is one of the more simple ones where it's just a simple flap. And then a little pocket here. And we'll put something in the pocket a little bit later. So with that, let's go ahead and set aside the designer papers and get our flap and pocket installed. Let me get all my... And I didn't go over it, but I've got my little goodie bag here of tools. So I've got a spatula, a bone folder. This is what I use to... yeah, I was going to say emboss, but that's what I use to make my folds, my score tool. Scissors, a couple of things to write with, and some ink in case I forgot anything. And then, of course, my tape tear. But I think I've got everything covered, so it should just be me taking tape off. I tried to be a little bit more prepared than last time. So, and then before I put this down, we're going to go and mark our pages real quick. One of the things that's a little bit challenging about designing outside the book is keeping in mind which side is going to have the open pocket and which side is going to be against the spine. So I'm going to mark all my pages right now, and this is a good idea for you guys to go ahead and do too. So I'm just making sure all the pockets are on the... There we go. Okay. And the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to use my gel pen. And I could have done this before I took my tape off, but it is what it is. So this is page 1. And this is going to be the outside of the book, and this is going to be the spine. So I'm actually going to put an S on this side. And so this would be page 2. And this would be the spine. And then we have a spine, page 3. Spine, page 4. Spine, page 5. Page 6. Spine, page 7. And then spine, page 8. And that matters because some of the features that I've designed, I prefer to be on the outside of the book, and some I want toward the spine. So it really kind of depends on what you're doing. Sounds like my dog's barking, so I think I need to go open the door. I'll be right back. Sorry about that. She has a bone and she hit it and she couldn't get back to it. It's so funny. She just barks at it because she can't get to it. Okay, so what I was saying is it depends. I want to know where the spine is because some features I want to place next to the spine. Others I want to place away from the spine. So with that, I'm sitting back down again. And I do want, this is page, it's page, but there's no number, page 1. That might be helpful. So this has a flap, and I actually want the flap to open, we'll move the rest, away from the spine. So it opens like this, and then the cover is on this side. So I want it on this side, so I'm gonna go ahead and get my tape off and get that laid down. And I had pulled the paper that I'm going to put on top of the flap out again just to verify the way the angel is facing, and I want her facing toward the spine, and that's the way she is. So with that, now I know I've got some feedback also that it's very difficult to see where I'm laying down, sorry about that, the interactive flaps, because it's black on black, and I appreciate that. I know it is. I'm gonna do my best to use contrast paper to help you guys see what I'm doing, but also to try to just talk through what it is I'm doing, so if you can't see it, I can at least describe. So there's my pocket. This is the side that'll get attached to the spine. And then here's the flap, which is going to go flush with the edge of the pocket page here. So I'm just lining up the corner, and as you know, I like to lay one corner down and then use that kind of as a pivot point to get the flap in. And before I burnish, I'm just making sure it's all, that it lines up and it's not hanging off either edge. And it looks pretty good. Okay, so that's in. So I'm just trying to give you a visual from both sides. So there's a 1/2 inch hinge, and it's laid down flush with the edge of the paper, okay? So the next thing is just a simple pocket, and I forgot to give you the measurements for the flap, sorry. So the flap is 6.5 by 8, 6.5 by 8, score it 1/2 inch. And then, and I'm gonna write that down too, because I'm gonna have to keep track of that. Page 1. 6.5 by 8, score 1/2 inch on 6.5 inch side. And then I have this pocket, which is 2.5 by 9. And you're going to score on 3 sides. For the pocket. And that is that. I'm writing these down because I didn't do it earlier. And I am going flush with a side on the spine. So I'm going to go as close to the edge of this as possible without going over. I'm going to tack down one corner and then try to get my fingers out from under it. Okay, there we go. So that's in. So there's our pocket and our flap. And that's it for page 1. So we're going to start putting designer paper in. So the cover is going to be this angel. All right, now I'm going to turn it toward me so I can see these corners. And if you are trying to work ahead at all, oops, I didn't mean to drop that down. Page 1 is also the same as page 8. So everything we just trimmed out, if you do it twice, you'll be ready for page 8. Didn't quite go in straight. All right. So I'm pressing against all the designer paper, and this came up in one of the comments too. And the reason I do that is to spread the glue around, so it doesn't just stay in a squiggly line, that it kind of spreads as I apply pressure to get better contact. I know somebody I was chatting with online was having difficulty, and her her paper was warping or creating bubble pockets after the glue dried. And I honestly, I'm not sure. I've not had that problem, but if any of you have, by all means, respond to me in comments and let me know what you've done to resolve that. She is using art glitter glue. And like I said, I've just not had that problem. So I kind of ran through the series of questions that I thought about, you know, is it this, is it that? Have you exposed your glue to extreme temperatures? And she answered no to all those questions, so I wasn't able to help her, and I feel disappointed about that. So if you guys have any hints, or if you're aware of a problem like that and you've been able to solve it, please respond in comments and share that with everyone. Just verifying it had glue. I think that's so pretty. So the other reason I like to write the page numbers on, if it's outside of the book, is it helps me with the what's up and what's down. Now I've got these two pieces, and I have to remember which orientation, what goes where. I think this is what I was gonna do, but I like both, really. It was tough. But I think it was the other way around. I think this is what I had decided. Yeah, that's it. There it is. I recognize it now. Although that's really hard to cover up, but it's a little too busy for a photo mat, I think. So I deliberately picked the images that I like the best for all the A sides of the flaps. So when I say A side, when everything is closed, I consider that the A side, and the B side would be once you open up some of the interactive elements. So let's see, do I want the numbers on the top or the bottom? And I think I like them on the bottom, even though I know this is upside down. But that's what I like. It's going to slip ever so slightly into the pocket. It's just a little bit smaller than the page here. And I'm turning it to get a better visual on the sides. Oops. Sorry, the light in here's, the window is open and it's casting, I'm casting a shadow on my own workspace, so be patient with me. This needs to come down just a little bit. I bent the corner. So I'm going to try going this direction down. And then I am going to use my tool to sort of tuck it in. Or I'm going to try lifting up, there we go, the pocket. There we go, so it's in. Normally I like to just slide it in, but I was having a really hard time seeing my score line, so I wanted to start there and then push down. All right, so I'm just verifying that everything is tacky enough. If not, I might have to lift and reapply glue in a few places, but it's feeling pretty good, but I think I am going to add some glue on this side. That's down, so that's good. Come across this edge, and I think I can use a little glue in there, but not much. Actually, that's pretty good. I'm not gonna mess with that. That's down pretty good. All right. Okay, so just checking my orientation again, even though this is not directional, and then this is gonna go here. So let's dry fit it real quick. And it looks beautiful, it's ready. I'm all thumbs this morning, sorry. Switch that around so I can better see these edges. Created my own bubble. I'm going to go ahead and double check that. Okay. That is page 1. Page 1. Beautiful. All right. So I did all that and I just realized I don't know how I'm keeping it closed. Oh, I hate it when I do that. So I think I can... That's one thing about trying to work the stop-start process, or not going through and just building the whole album and then doing designer paper. It gives me time to think about closures. So one of the things I can do is use something in the pocket, and I'm just making sure I can go all the way across. Yeah, so I can put something in the pocket to hold it closed, but I don't really like that because I don't really want to cover my paper. All right, I got to think about that. God dang it. Is there any way I can get under here? Is it too late? It's not. I'm going to put a magnet in here. And you should do the same. So here's my magnet, and I'm gonna slip it under. And I need something, I'll have to use this. I need something that won't try to pick the magnet back up. So I'm gonna slip my magnet in, and then I'm gonna find a way to put something on this side. And I'm gluing it back down. My magnet's right about there, so I'm going to put a magnet on the other side so I know where it's at. There it is. Okay, so don't do what I did. Think about your magnet, and I'll try to put my magnets front and center so I don't do that again. So it needs to go right about here. So now I'm going to have to try to lift this up. And luckily, it's coming up pretty easy. So that actually came up pretty easy. So I'm trying to figure out how far. So it needs to come to about there, midpoint. Luckily the edge is going to be tucked under when I'm done, so I'm not really worried about what I'm doing here. Okay, that's up. Now I'm going to slip this under, and hopefully I didn't do that right. I need to make sure it's so it needs to go down this way. So I'm just trying to get it to attract to the other magnet. There it goes. Did it happen? Yes. We did it! Woohoo! So don't do it my way. Do it the normal way. Put your magnet in before you put your paper in.
Mama?
Yes, I'm taping. Hang on. Okay, everyone, it's me. I'm back. Sam, that's my son. He was getting ready to go out and spend the day with his girlfriend. So hopefully I'll be uninterrupted for a few minutes. My hubby is actually at the dentist, so I've got the house to myself for now. Okay, so as you know, I kind of blew that and forgot the magnet, but now it's in. And you saw how I did that. So I like to lift it with a pick tool. A spatula would have done the trick as well. And then when I place the magnet, use something that won't attract the magnet. Otherwise you stick it in and you keep pulling it right back out. So that's in for now. So for those of you that haven't built it just yet, I actually a lot of times want my flap to overlay my pocket, because once you put stuff in your pocket, it makes it harder and harder for the magnets to continue to attract. So it's something to think about in magnet placement. And one of the things you can do is place magnets on the outside so that anything in the pocket doesn't interfere with the attraction, or make your flap go over and place the magnet actually on the pocket itself. And that way it doesn't matter how much you put in the pocket, it's still going to attract. I don't know where my head was when I was designing this flap, but I think it was because I wanted a continuous pattern. Anyway, so it's just something to think about when you're placing your magnets. And if I had it to do over again, I probably would have placed my magnets, 2 of them, on the outside. So, learn from my experience. Now we're on to page 2. And page 2 is a flap design that I've seen before, and I can't remember where, but somebody asked me if I would actually do this flap design, and so here it is, and it's pretty cool. So I actually have, this is going to be page 2 and page 7, and I'm flipping through because I want to show you. I think I've got one of them. Never mind. I'm going to stick with putting this in as is. Excuse me. This is, and I also want to point out that I don't have the inside layers, papers cut yet. Part of that is because when I do, pardon me, I got a frog in my throat. When I do my designs, I go and cover everything that's going to be exposed in the closed position first, and then use the remaining paper to cover the B-sides. And, oh no, so what I have for the B-sides are these, is that right? No, I have some of the flaps that need to be covered. So this is kind of a complicated one. Sorry, I'm rambling. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start with the flaps that we have, and we're going to get those installed. So you have 2 flaps. Oh, this is one that's partially done. You have 2 flaps that are 4.5 by 8. 4.5 by 8. You're going to score a 1/2 inch on the 4.5 inch side. You're going to do that 2 times. 4.5 by 8, and I'm going to write that down. And we're going to score 1/2 inch on 4.5 inch side. Okay, let's go ahead and get these in. I'm going to dry fit it real quick and make sure it's flush with the height of the, it is. Okay, so now these are going to get installed with the hinges joining, or not joining, but meeting in the middle. So the flaps are going to open away from the edges of the page. So I'm going to dry fit these really quick and try to decide if I'm going to lay one down and measure off the other, or if I need to kind of jointly lay them down. And I think I can lay them down at the same time. But give me a second. Now, before we get too far, we are going to put magnets on this. Okay, so it looks, and I'm just measuring side to side. I did up and down, now I'm doing side to side, and it looks really good. So I think because it's so closely meets the same size as the pocket page, I can lay one piece down, make sure it's flush with these edges, and then back the other one into it. And that is what I'm going to do. All right. Okay. So we're going to take this edge, and it's going to actually get applied toward the center of page 2. Toward the center of page 2. Now that's unusual. These usually get applied to the outside. So we're going to get the corners straight, and then I'm going to come across and lay it down. Okay, and I'm just making sure both sides remain flush. And then I'm going to come through and get that hinge to tuck under and press it into place. Okay, so there it is. There is our first hinge. Before we get much further, I'm going to put some magnets down so I don't forget, like I did just a minute ago. And additionally, once you have the magnets in, my goodness, I can't get rid of that frog in my throat. It'll hold the papers in place while you're doing other things so that they don't get in your way. And these are not basic gray small. These are large magnets because I ran out of my basic gray small, which is my preference. They're easier to conceal. These are very flat, but they're very large. So if you were doing any piecing, which reminds me, I am doing, but it's on this side. So if you're doing any color blocking, you have to really consider that where you're placing your magnet, because it could be exposed. So I think I'm doing a solid page, and even if I'm not, I'll have to work around that. Now we're going to put in the other one, and we're going to go butt it straight up against it like this. Before I install it, I want to point out that there's already a second flap here. So this is going to open toward the center, and then it also has a flap that's going to drop down. And I pre-installed it only because I had not done this before, and I wanted to build one start to finish. So there's a flap on the outside, and we'll come back and put one on this side as well. But this is 8 by 4.5, 8 by 4.5, score at 1/2 inch. And then we'll talk about that second flap in just a second. So I'm going to turn this so that I can see what I'm doing. All right, so there we go. So the next thing is we're going to add a flap to this side that goes down. So you have two of these that go down. And this is 4 by 7 3/4. 4 by 7 3/4, and you're going to score 1/2 inch on the 7 3/4, so you have a finished panel of 7 1/4 when you're done. You're going to do that 2 times, one for each flap. All right, so that is in, and I'm going to write that down as well. So this 4 by 7 3/4, score 1/2 inch on 7 3/4 side. All right. So one of the things, this is what's going to keep this flap in place. We've got 2 of these little hinges. They're 2 by 2.5, 2 by 2.5. They're going to get attached to the top of the pocket page to hold this all in place, okay? So we're gonna open our pocket page and it's gonna get installed right here. So this is the actual base of the pocket page and this is a flap. So we're going to center this piece here. So when it's closed, it'll hold all these pieces in place, okay? So right now I'm just looking to see where I want to install it. I'm going to hold it in place while I open my flaps. And then I'm going to put just a little tick mark here so I can see where to install it. Okay, 2.5 by 2, score 1/2 inch along the 2.5 inch side, and that is this flap. And actually, I want to do it this way. And the reason I want to do it this way is I want to make sure that when it closes smooth. So I'm going to center it here and then lay the pages down. Except for I have to get it to let go of me. There we go. That looks good. All right, now we're going to add, and I added a magnet here the other day because I didn't want to forget it. So now we're going to put the opposing magnet on this flap. So it'll go right here. And hopefully I've got it low enough. I may have to adjust it. Let's see. Yeah, it is. So the paper that I put on top of this panel will cover it. So that's going to keep this flap closed. And then this flap is held in. Sorry, you have to open this. Then this. Is that what I want? You know what? I'm rethinking that. I think I want to move this. Yep. We're going to move this and we're going to actually put this flap on this hinge, on this flap, so that when you open it, the whole thing opens and this is not in the way. So I'm going to lift this real quick. So this is one of those things where, like I said, this is not a flap design that I've done before. So I'm sort of building it and learning as I go. So I didn't burnish it into place, so it's coming up relatively easy. There we go. So I'm going to place it on this flap. Somewhere, and I think I'm gonna do this. So I'm gonna change it so that the tape goes down and I can press it into place because I want it. Again, I'm taking it off the main pocket page and I'm adding it to this center flap. And visually I'm trying to center it before I press it into place. which I'm having a hard time with. Okay, that looks right. Now I have to change this magnet because it changed the polarization here, so I'm going to have to flip this one over. And that's because I reversed the hinge on it. There we go. Oh, you guys, I thought I was so prepared last night. It doesn't matter. No matter how hard I try to get in here and I have to futz around in front of you. Oh, well. Okay, so here's our two magnets now, and they're very close to each other, so they're going to be quite strong even after we cover them. There we go. That's beautiful. Now we're going to do the same thing on this side. So I had already pre-installed this. If you haven't done that, add this flap. And then we're going to use this hinge. We're wrapping it around it, and it's going to get installed just like so. So it's, the back is here on the flap. Okay, so we want to come centered as best we can. Sorry, it went on crooked. There we go. There it is. All right, and there's the back. Okay. And on this side, same thing. There's the back. Okay. All right. So when I was opening these, I noticed that this really is going to be drawn to this magnet here. So I'm actually going to flip it over so they're polar opposites, and it'll repel it instead of trying to grab it. And it'll just make using the book a little bit easier, I think. It's not necessary, but I think it'll, like I said, make it easier to operate the flap. So it's not stuck on the flap next to it. So I have to think about this. So I know I don't want this side. Yeah, that's right. So that's the way I want it. I'm going to verify that real quick. Yep, that's the right side. So now it's repelling and not trying to grab this magnet. All right, that's it. Okay, so now we have these two flaps. and then this drops down. Okay, so the one thing we still need to do is add a magnet on this side. So let's do that. There we go. Press it into place. And I dropped a magnet, but I'll have to come back and find it. Oh, here it is. Here it is. All right, so all our magnets are in place. Now we're ready to start laying in our designer paper. And I want to go over that again. 2.5 by 2, score on the 2.5 inch side, 1/2 inch. Okay, this is 4 by 7 3/4, scored 1/2 inch. 4.5 by 8, scored 1/2 inch on the 4.5 inch side. That is all the designer papers for these flaps. So I'm going to get in the main papers. So we're going to put this little Christmas kitty here. And this is the matching side. And so, like I said, there's some busy patterns here, so it's kind of hard to do, you know, 2 different sheets. So what I did here is I cut out this image and then split it in half, and I'm sharing it across these 2 flaps. So that's how I designed this part here, because like something like this I think is not so great. A little too busy. So I did this same design idea when I repeat this on page 7. I took a large image and split it in half. Okay, now I'm going to take this tape off, and then I am going to move my contrast sheet here so you guys can see, hopefully better see what I'm doing. Make sure my cat's right side up. Just double checking, making sure everything's in the right way. I'm going to actually turn it around because I want to focus on the edges on the top versus the bottom. Okay, that's in. So we're going to do that one more time right next door, right here. And this goes just like so. So I wanted to move that real quick because I'm looking for this continuous line across the 2 panels, and it looks really good. So now I'm going to press it into place. Can't remember if I took the tape off. Yes, I did. The tape backing, I mean. Okay, that closes, and I just realized I don't think I cut any paper for the flip side of these flaps. All right, and that is the current plan. Let's get these on so I don't mislay them somewhere. All right, so that is coming right along. And remember, these open toward the center. You do have to be a little careful when you're opening these, because this is a flap, so it is going to move around a little bit and possibly get caught here. So the other thing you could do is put a strip in the middle that sort of separates the design, maybe at a 1/4 inch, and give yourself a little bit of room to maneuver these flaps. I thought about doing that, but then it makes this panel less than 4 inches, and I like 4-inch panels because that's a standard for photos, right? 4x6. So I don't like to go too much smaller than 4 inches. Otherwise, it makes it hard to use this panel for photos. So it's something to think about. And of course, the other thing would be to make it a larger pocket altogether, you know, 8.5 inches, and then you'd have that 1/2 inch in between. So it does function, but you do have to be mindful that those flaps are free to move about. Okay, so that's in. And that's enough about that. Let's go ahead and get the inside, or the B sides of these flaps decorated. And as I had mentioned, I failed to trim something out for those 2 spots. So I'm gonna have to come back and do that later. But I do have paper for here. And I think this is what I had in mind. But honestly, I have to lay it out again and double check. So I think this is where I was headed. And then I have these strips, and I don't know why I picked these colors because they're way too bold for this. So I'm gonna have to have something else. So I'm planning on color blocking on the bottom and having a full strip on the top. And these look like they're already trimmed down and perfect. So I'm gonna lay them down, and then we are gonna have to jointly work together to make these pieces fit here. And then I'll want a strip, locate a strip that can go in between. So these look like they're ready to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and lay them down, and yes, they are. It's ready. And I picked muted patterns for the interior because this is where I expect the photos to go. The cover with the kitty, I don't think I would cover that. I think that would just be a decorative page inside the album, and that the photos would actually go underneath the cat, or on the flip side, this side. Okay. I'm going to crank it around so I can better see these edges. That looks good. Okay, that's in. Okay, I'm going to turn this. So here's what we're going to do on the bottom. So I love this pattern, and I think it looks really good down here. So these are going to go in toward the bottom. Remember, these are 2 different flaps. We don't have to do them both at the same time, but when I come to trim them out, I want to make sure that any trim line that I have goes straight across. So right now I'm just making sure they're the right width. And it's hard for me to see, so we'll use this. There we go. And that is correct. So now we're going to do the same thing on this side. And that also looks good. And then these are the pieces that I chose to put on top, like so. So I'm trying to decide, do I want more of the yellow or more of the blue? And I like it this way. So what I'm gonna do is trim these down so that there's no overlap. So let's get the gold pieces in first, and then they'll be stationary and I can trim the blue pieces off the gold. Okay, I'm just looking for nice, clear, consistent border. There's a little bit of adhesive there from sometimes when you're taking them out of the pack for Stamperia, the glue will follow you. It looked like there was a little bit of adhesive left over. So I'm bumping it up against the panel just above it to make sure they're the same width, and as you can see they are. So I'm ready to put this down. Sorry for all the throat clearing. I don't know what's going on. Wow, I just panicked and thought I hadn't hit the record button after Sam left. All right. Too much glue. Got a little heavy-handed on the glue there. Okay, that one's in. So this looks good. Okay, there we are. Very good, very good. Okay, now we're ready to add our blue, and we're gonna need to make some marks and do a trim. Okay, sorry, just straighten up so I can think straight. Okay, so I am going to close one and start . Okay, that's pretty close, but I want a little more off so that I have a little bit better border. Okay, so that should be just perfect. And it is. So there we go. Now, I could measure this to trim this one, but it's usually best to measure off the panel itself because of the slight variation between things. I'm going to ink this corner. And then we're still likely going to come back and add a trim piece between the two. Not this, but something like this to go across the two that are here. And I'm flipping through real quick to see if I find something that catches my eye. I actually like this one quite a bit, but I don't think I have 2 of these. So it'll be something. I'm actually going to set that aside, get these in, and then come back and do something with that later. This would have been the other option, by the way, which I like too. But it was I didn't have a lot of this paper, and I wanted this pattern somewhere. As you know, Stamperia collections, you know, come in those 10 packs, and there's no duplication. So I did have some, because I used a 22 and a 10. There are some duplicates. This wasn't one of them. And it's working out to be plenty of paper to complete this album. So a 10 pack and a 22 pack is what I'm using. And I'll use all of it, but it's working out to be enough for this album. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close this one. And then we are going to trim this piece out. Okay, let's see how we did. Okay, now I'm going to flip this down because I want to look for that continuous line. And I need to trim a little more. Just a little more. Let's see how that does. A little more. That should do it. Yes. Okay. Let's get some ink on that edge we just trimmed and get this in. If we put it in that way, this flip side, we would have had that natural border, which looks really good too. I'm kind of disappointed now that I didn't do that because I see that now up here. So maybe that's what I had originally planned and forgot. It happens. I like them both ways. All right, there we go. All right, so last thing is we're gonna come across and put, well, 2 things. We need to cover the back of these, so I'll have to find something to trim out here. And this might be it. I will look for a scrap big enough to cover this, and I like the idea of this yellow here, which pulls this pattern back in. So I'm gonna have to dig around, and this is a little too small. So I'll have to dig around and find a 2x2 or a 4x2 that I can split it across the 2. So I need to cover that, and then I do want to come back and do something here. And I know I have a couple of scraps that have like measuring tapes on them. That would look really good here. I think the red is too bold, but I'll find something, like maybe even that, to come across the center. And maybe not even the whole thing, just the measuring tape. So I will find something, and we will do that as part of the embellishment. Okay, so again, we need to cover these 2 pieces and add a decorative strip here. I've got to clean off this extra tape, otherwise it's going to tear my paper. And then there's still 2 more places that need to be covered, and I actually don't have those papers trimmed out yet. and part of that was because I was still covering all my A sides. So I am going to stop here, and then when I come back, we'll do the inside of the flaps here. I'm just tucking this tape under so it doesn't grab my designer paper here. And I think I've got it all. Okay, so my fingers aren't gripping. So those close like that. So what's left to do on both sides is this. So I've got to go find a couple of relatively large pieces of paper to trim these out, okay? I love it. I think this is a very cool flap design. I'm very happy with it. I just see that I lifted up my flap a little bit here, so. Okay, so when I come back, we'll have paper for the inside. Okay, I've found some paper to cover the last parts of page 2, and I want to show you what I've done. So I cut 4 squares that are going to cover these 2 areas, and I taped these 2 coordinating patterns together and then trimmed them collectively down to size, inked the edges, and I did the same thing here. And then when we reverse it, we're going to have the same pattern on the other flaps. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get this down, and then that will, and then I'm going to go show you what I did while I was away to cover the top hinge. Get some glue down. Okay, that side's in. Now we'll do this side. Okay, that's in. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing on this side. And I've done the same thing. I've pieced together 4 quarters that are going to cover the surface. And I'm just going to dry fit one more time, but it looks good. So as you know, I'm using a 10 pack and a 22 pack, and it is going to be enough to cover the album, but you are going to have to do color blocking because you will run out of larger size pieces if you're doing an 8x8 album. So keep that in mind. If you don't like to color block, if you don't like that look, or if it's just too tedious for you, which I completely understand, the 10 pack and the 22 pack won't be enough. You'll need some more paper. Otherwise, you're going to run out of, like I said, pieces that are, 8 inches in length. like for here, I had some sheets that are still intact, but it would have been blue and... Okay, I know the phone started ringing, and when that happens, it pauses the camera. So I'm not sure where I left you, so I'm going to go over a few things again. So we are on the inside flaps here, and this one I trimmed out. It was just a little bit too big, so I was just dry fitting, getting ready to lay it down. And again, it's 4 quadrants. They're taped together and then trimmed at the same time, so you get these beautiful edges rather than trying to trim it after you've glued it down. And that is looking pretty good. So let me double check I've inked everything, and I have. So I'm going to turn it sideways, get my tape off, and get ready to lay this down. There we go. All right. All right. Okay, so that's in. I'm going to cap my glue, and then I'm going to walk you through the whole page design real quick. Give you one more chance to take a look at it before we move on to page 3. Okay, so this is the closed position. When you come to page 2, this is what it's going to look like. It opens. There's the, oh, I failed to mention. So while I was away, I went and found that coordinating yellow paper, which goes with this down here. So this flaps down, and I added this accent strip here. Instead of just having these 2 pieces join, I added this accent piece, which goes with this right here. So that closes down like that, and then this whole thing opens just like so. And then that is continued here, and then it opens this way. Okay, so that is the end of page 2. And next we're going to move on to page 3, but I'm going to leave that out there for you to look at, and I'll be back shortly and we will get started on page 3. And page 3 has an envelope feature in it, and I'm going to show you how I came to make my envelope. I made my own envelope out of cardstock using the We Are Memory envelope maker. So I'll show you the size that I created, and then we'll get started with page 3. So that's it for now.